Smoke from the early morning drills curled into the sky as if the sea itself was exhaling. The naval base buzzed with disciplined chaos, boots stomping, orders echoing, ships glinting under the rising sun, and in the middle of it all stood a single father, a war-torn veteran named Ethan Hayes, clutching a worn leather file in one hand and his son's small, trembling fingers in the other. He had returned not as a soldier, but as a father seeking a fresh start, hoping to join the civilian maintenance division after years of combat. But before he even stepped inside the administrative office, a stern voice cut through the air like a blade. A Navy Admiral, cold-eyed and towering, scanned Ethan from boots to brow and said words that fell heavier than any bullet Ethan had ever faced: "You're not needed here. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us humanity still matters, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to channel name. More powerful stories are coming your way." Ethan tightened his grip on his son Liam's hand, feeling the boy flinch. Liam, only 8, had already seen too much: nights in shelters, bills piling like enemies at the gate, the grief of losing his mother to illness while Ethan was deployed overseas. Ethan could handle insults, he had handled far worse, but watching his son shrink under another man's dismissiveness tore something inside him. He swallowed his pride, remembering the promise whispered to his wife's fading smile on a hospital bed: "I'll give him a good life, love. I'll be present. I'll be better." The world owed him nothing, he knew that, yet he hoped it would at least allow him to try. Inside the office, he submitted his papers, keeping his voice steady even when his heart felt like a sinking vessel. The Admiral, Thomas Mercer, decorated, respected, feared, stood aside, arms folded, eyes filled with quiet judgment. Word around the base was Mercer didn't believe combat vets belonged among civilians. Ethan heard whispers behind him: some recognized him, some pitied him. He tried not to care. For months after discharge, he had done odd jobs: warehouse lifting, night security, dishwashing, anything to feed Liam. But every paycheck evaporated between school fees and medical bills. This job meant stability. It meant routine. It meant hope. For the first week, Ethan fixed rusty railings, painted docks, hauled supplies, kept his head low. Some officers mocked the way his uniform sleeves sat awkwardly over old scars, some snickered at the kid waiting quietly after school on the pier. Liam would sit with homework on his knees, legs swinging, waiting for his dad to finish shift. Ethan apologized with eyes every time he passed by, wishing he could give his son more. Yet every night as they shared instant noodles in their tiny rented room, Liam smiled: as long as his father came home, everything was enough. But Admiral Mercer seemed determined to break him. He assigned Ethan the heaviest loads, the filthiest tasks, the most impossible deadlines. "Let's see if you're truly capable," he would say dryly. When Ethan injured his shoulder lifting crates, Mercer only raised an eyebrow. When Liam stood under the rain because the guard wouldn't let him wait inside, Mercer didn't intervene. The man acted like compassion was weakness. Ethan endured, not because he was weak, but because he knew battles aren't always fought with guns. Some are fought with patience, dignity, and silent perseverance. One evening, long after drills ended, thunder rolled across the ocean. A storm was brewing, fierce, violent, unforgiving. Ethan was repairing an old supply boat as waves slapped against the pier when Liam ran toward him drenched and shivering. His small voice quivered as he confessed that bullies at school had torn his backpack and called him the poor kid with a broken dad. Ethan knelt and hugged him tight, rain mixing with tears neither of them wanted to admit were falling. He wished his wife were there, she would have known what to say. Instead, he whispered, "We'll get through this, son. I promise." Lightning cracked the sky. Men shouted in panic. A training ship returning early had lost engine power, drifting toward jagged rocks near the harbor entrance. They needed someone experienced in emergency navigation to board, steer, and stabilize until tugs arrived. Officers rushed, but Mercer hesitated, scanning his team. None had real combat storm steering experience. The sea roared like an animal hungry for metal and lives. Ethan stood quietly, heart pounding. He knew those waters, he had steered vessels through worse under enemy fire. But he also knew Mercer's disdain. He stepped forward anyway, water dripping from his lashes, and said in a low steady tone, "I can help." Mercer scoffed, but desperation cracked through his pride. "If you fail, lives are lost. If you succeed," he paused, eyes narrowing, "you still won't be needed here." Ethan felt the sting, but nodded. Not for recognition. For the men on that ship. For Liam watching. For the soldier in him who still cared. He boarded through chaos, waves hammering like fists. Thunder blinded the horizon. Officers held ropes tight as the boat tossed violently. Ethan took the helm, every muscle screaming from cold and old wounds. Memories of war flashed, nights in hostile seas, brothers lost to storms and gunfire, promises unfinished. He gritted his teeth and guided the vessel inch by painful inch away from the rocks, fighting nature itself as if it were another enemy. The ship groaned under pressure, but Ethan's hands never shook. Liam, standing at the pier under a poncho someone finally gave him, watched with wide eyes full of hope. Hours passed like years. When tugs arrived and pulled the ship safely to dock, sailors stumbled out, drenched but alive. The crew approached Ethan with gratitude, patting his back, shaking his hand. Mercer watched from a distance, jaw tight, pride warring with shame. Ethan didn't boast. He simply stepped down, exhausted, face pale, body trembling. Liam ran to him, hugged him fiercely, and whispered, "You're my hero, Dad." Ethan's knees buckled, not from weakness, but from overwhelming love. Next morning, something unexpected happened. The sailors whose lives he saved gathered signatures, requesting Ethan's permanent hiring with benefits. Even officers who once mocked him now nodded with respect. Parents of Liam's classmates donated funds for a new backpack and uniforms anonymously. The base had changed, not because Ethan demanded it, but because he quietly proved worth isn't defined by rank, scars, or circumstances, but by heart. Finally, Admiral Mercer approached Ethan. The base fell silent as he stood before the veteran he once dismissed. His voice, usually sharp, softened slightly. "I tested you because I thought your time had passed. But you've reminded us all what true service looks like: humility, courage, and devotion not just to duty, but to family." The Admiral took a breath, gaze flickering to Liam. "You are needed here. Not as a burden, but as an example." Ethan felt tears burn his eyes, tears he hadn't allowed since war. He shook Mercer's hand, not out of victory, but forgiveness. Maybe the Admiral, like many, had forgotten humanity behind medals and protocols. Now he remembered. Months later, Ethan had a stable job at the base, earned respect, and even began training young recruits on emergency protocols. Liam thrived in school, smiling more, laughing louder. They moved to a small apartment near the sea, where sunsets painted the sky like second chances. Some nights Ethan stood on the shore, waves washing over his boots, imagining his wife somewhere beyond the horizon smiling proudly. He had kept his promise, and life rewarded him not with riches, but with peace. If this story touched your heart, if you believe no one should be judged by scars or struggles, please like this video, subscribe to channel name, share it with someone who might need hope today. Your support brings more real stories to life. Before you go, comment below. What part of this story moved you the most? And remember, sometimes all it takes is one act of humility, one moment of courage, to change everything.